Welcome back, Grief Nation listeners. And today on our show, we have a very special guest, and her name is Ciar Burdine. Ciar, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm excited to be on your show, Miami. Thank you.
You are so welcome. We are going to just jump right in. I've been so excited to speak to you.
Sure.
So, the first question that I have is, if you had to describe yourself, who are you?
I think this is such a multifaceted answer. I am a work in progress. I am on the latter part of my 50s, pushing 60 in a few years, and I'm still a work in progress. My proudest thing that I am is a mom and a grandmother. I have wonderful children. I have two incredible grandchildren. So those are the most important things that describe who I am. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, an aunt, I'm a granddaughter still. I'm a friend. And then I'm an advocate. I am hopefully a changer, a mover and a shaker. I'm a wannabe writer. I'm a lot of things, but my proudest accomplishment and proudest thing are the mom and grandma that I am to my kids and grandkids.
All right. Oh, so amazing. That's touching to me for you to even acknowledge everybody, and that makes that whole makeup of you and who
Yeah,
you are. Yes, yes, yes. So thank you so much
absolutely.
for sharing that. So if you could please share both life altering events. We have talked over some time and I've heard your story, but please, share with my Grief Nation listeners the life altering events that have changed your life.
Yes, absolutely. In December of 2009, my husband, who was my husband for 15 years and my best friend for 25 years, I was so fortunate to marry my best friend. Um, just right before Christmas, he had laid down for a nap. He'd been sick with the flu, and he laid down for a nap on a Saturday afternoon, and um, he didn't wake up. He passed away within a couple minutes of laying down, um, and passed away in his sleep. The doctors, or rather the medical examiner, said he had an enlarged heart, and it was an instant dysrhythmia, not a heart attack, but just an instant dysrhythmia from an enlarged heart. That devastated my family. My youngest children were 9 and 11 when it happened. My oldest were 21. I have my son Ciar was 21, and my stepdaughter Alicia was also 21. And it just devastated us. It was a complete shock. My husband was only 45. And while he had health problems, no one expected him to pass away that day. It's forever changed December, how we feel about December, how we feel about Christmas in our family. And it just, it's a huge void. It's a huge void for my children and for me and for my grandkids that never got to meet their grandfather. Just 2.5 years after my husband died, my oldest son, Ciar, was shot and killed August 25th of 2012. That was, again, a complete shock. It's interesting. People have asked me, would I rather know someone is dying so I get the goodbyes? I've never had that in my life. My father died unexpectedly, my husband died unexpectedly, and my son died unexpectedly. So I don't know what that's like at all.
Yeah.
I know that just the shock of it has been life altering and all of those circumstances. But I'm forever changed by, especially my husband and my son's death.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry that this has happened
You.
to your family. And
Thank you.
like you said, the shock of it all. And for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, I know earlier you spoke about becoming an author, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, those three deaths tie all in together for you. And,
Mm-hmm.
great type, the shock of it all, not knowing, and would it
Mm-hmm.
be better or not? But yeah, there's a book for all of that. I see that
Exactly.
coming for you. So
Exactly.
sharing your stories with others, and like as you are here today to just help people go, helping others go through that um loss of, almost like I hear like a trinity of
Yes.
three. Wow. I don't know what that's going to be, but I know it's going to be amazing sharing,
Thank
that
you.
with others. During both of your loss of losing your husband and your son, afterwards, or in between, did you or your family have any counseling?
We did. Since my youngest two were so young, my daughter Lauren was in fourth grade, and my son Cameron was in sixth grade when James died. And there's a wonderful program here in Oklahoma City specifically for children that have lost a parent or a sibling in any manner. So I enrolled them in this program and begrudgingly pulled them to these meetings. And part of this was, while the kids were having their counseling sessions with age appropriate counseling sessions, um, I had to sit and listen to other people's stories. It was so difficult. But one of the most beautiful things that happened during this counseling session, I think this was on the last night, and this went on for a couple months, every other Monday for a couple months. They gave every family a small terracotta planter, and we were supposed to put it in a sack, and then they gave each of us a hammer, and we were supposed to break. Each family was supposed to break the terracotta planter up, and we thought, okay, none of us knew where this was going, so we broke the planter up. And then they said, okay, open the bag, pour out the contents, and just, smash it a couple times. And then they gave us each a bottle of glue and said, put it back together. And we couldn't. We were getting so frustrated. It's like, the bottom's not staying and this and that. And finally, all hands on deck. There were six hands. You hold this piece while I glue. You hold this piece while I glue. Oh, let me back up. When we smashed these pieces, then they'd given us Sharpie markers, and we were supposed to write words on each large piece, something to remember Dad by. So we wrote these things, and then they gave us the glue and said, now put it back together.
Wow.
So we have this very broken and tattered and shattered pot that is glued back together. And they gave us a candle, and they said, the pot doesn't look the same. The pot doesn't feel the same, but they dimmed the lights and we lit the candle, and you could see the light coming out of each hole in all these beautiful pots. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. It was so beautiful. It's just like the light is still reflecting from your dad and other kids, from your mom, from your sister. Yeah. It was just beautiful. And that is sitting on the shelf in my family room, prominent display to this day. Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be 12 years next month, 12 years later. It's just beautiful. So we sought counseling right away. When Ciar was killed, it was so different. Miami, I was just in a state of shock. I just could not. While I was shocked with James's death, I knew I still had little kids that I had to get to school every day and, cook and clean for. When Ciar was killed, it was just so different. And it was my child, not my husband. So it took me, I think, around 2 years to go to counseling. And I finally thought, oh, okay, I was seeing things in my children. Their I'm not going to say refusal to talk about it, but I thought this is really odd. We're just not mentioning it, what happened a whole lot. And my son Cameron just dove deep into his friendships, which I thought was beautiful, but I could see my daughter just becoming an introvert, more and more and more introverted. So I sought counseling for the three of us, and each of them would, again, go to an age appropriate counselor. It was not the same program. And it was so beneficial. I'm so thankful that we did that. My son's counselor said, if his thing is to surround himself with friends, let him surround himself with friends. And it has worked for Cameron all these years. For my daughter, the counselor said, is there any way she can get a puppy or a kitten? She can turn, the sorrow will turn into love and care for something else. And she can't do it with mom and brother. She needs something that's her own. So she got a puppy and was a wonderful dog mom to her puppy. And then for me, I went a little bit longer. I besides my grief, I was so angry. I was so angry, and I really, really needed an outlet for that anger. So I went to counseling longer than my children did, but it was incredibly beneficial. And I had what I think is the world's greatest counselor at the time. She was just wonderful and helped me tremendously to kind of sort out grief from anger, from action, and gave me some really wonderful tools that I use to this day.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for sharing
Yeah,
all of that information and how the counselor, how uh, about the pot story. That's going to
it's
always stick with
beautiful.
me. That was very beautiful, and how the light came
Yeah,
through, and
yeah.
the struggle of going to counseling, even though you had counseling prior to. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Just, why do you feel that it took you 2 years as opposed to you going right on with it initially?
Well, quite frankly, the first year I was numb. I was just, I woke up every day saying, this cannot be real. I kept expecting Ciar to walk through the door. I kept expecting a phone call from him. And the first year, I just, short of waking up and going to bed, that was pretty much my life. I made sure that my kids were attending school and they were, fine, as healthy as could be. And I just struggled. I kept thinking, how is this my life? The second year, so the first year was really shock for me. The second year was complete anger. I mean, a year of holy smokes. I'm really mad that somebody's careless and callous decision changed our lives forever and took my son's life. This wasn't an illness. This was not Ciar's choice to die that evening. Someone else made the decision to wreck our lives. And I was just so angry. And I'm going to say I didn't do anything outwardly
Mhm.
about my anger. I just thought I owe my kids more than this. I owe them so much more than being a bitter. They know I'm changed and they're going to be changed forever, but the bitterness and the absolute, I mean, anger doesn't seem strong enough a word, quite frankly. But I thought I owe my kids so much more than this. They've lost their dad, they've lost their brother. I cannot turn into this really, really unattractive, ugly personality and mom for them. And I thought, okay, time to ask for some help.
Yeah. Now share just as much as you would like to share in surrounding Ciar's criminal case, or how can the public support you? Or is there a number, or is there, where are you with the criminal case?
We just passed the 9-year mark for Ciar's murder in August of this year, and it is still unsolved. They have had a suspect pretty much all along from the very beginning. And unfortunately, when my son was killed, there were 200 people at the scene. It was a grand opening of a sports bar that evening, and there were 200 witnesses there. And no one, no one has come forward. Um, just over a year into
Stay tuned. It's the Miami Night Show. We'll be right back.
a confidential informant came forward and said, this is what I witnessed. This is what I heard. This is what I was told by the person responsible for killing Ciar. Um, but it was kind of, while they think it's credible, it was still kind of shaky information. And it's only shaky because the guy was a convicted felon. So they thought, oh, he's not going to be credible enough for a jury. They'll think, oh, he probably did it. He's just trying to put it on somebody else. So our local district attorney declined charges on that. They arrested the guy. We had a real showy press conference that included me. Yay, they made an arrest against the district attorney's advice. And after the press conference ended, the guy was let go, I believe, that same afternoon. It might have been the next morning that he was released. So for the last 9 years,
Stay tuned. It's the Miami Night Show. We'll be right back.
being the protective mom still to Ciar, I've kept up with him, and it's a cold case with the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office. We have had no movement on it in all these years. I am trying desperately to get the case turned over to Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and have new agents assigned to his case that I believe will work a little more tenaciously to solve it. So I make a plea quite often on my social media. I've done media stories since Ciar was killed, asking for the public's help. There's a parent out there that has a grandchild that might have been there, a grandparent that has a grandchild that could have been at the scene. There's a parent with kids. There are now 9 years older, young men and young women that were at the scene that could have seen something. And at the time they were terrified and didn't want to come forward. They were in shock and didn't want to come forward, but things might have settled down a bit, settled in their conscience a bit more over the last 9 years, that they can come forward now. So I always make a plea that if anyone has information, to contact the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office. And I'm 9 years later, I'm still saying it. I hope this is going to be the last year. I hope before we hit 10 years that we have an arrest, a trial and conviction. That would be glorious. But if not, and the reality is that there very well could be in my lifetime, if not, I'm still, I can be the vessel if they don't want to go to the sheriff's office directly.
So what part of, and I know you did discuss this a little bit earlier, but what part of the stages of grief do you relate to out of the 5 or 6 or 7? Because, there's so many out there, but I really relate to the 5 stages. So can you share any information surrounding your the life cycle of grief that you experience?
Oh, sure. It's going to be denial and shock. Clearly, that hit me the hardest with James and Ciar. With James, I wasn't so much angry as just, I just felt so cheated. I felt so cheated because, like I said, I married my best friend, and good gracious, I didn't want to do, I was 44 when I was widowed, and I didn't want to do life without him. Didn't want to continue raising our children. We planned this life and planned our children. And, I was just so disappointed and just heartbroken. The one thing that, and then of course, anger with Ciar. The one thing that I think it's safe to say that I didn't experience was depression. I would, especially with James, I was too busy. Trying to take care of my children to be depressed or to even have that enter my mind. And I have to say, I'm if I was depressed, I sure didn't know it. And if I've never acknowledged it. I just thought, too busy, got to keep going. And I had a wonderful support system. My mom was by far the biggest blessing in my life. When my husband died, every single day, we would either see each other or talk on the phone for hours. I would call her at 3 a.m, just bawling and crying. And she'd just say, I know. My mom was widowed in her 50s. So she knew exactly what I was going through. It's just that my brothers and I were already grown when our dad passed away. But she was so instrumental. She helped me with my children. She was just such a huge blessing. With Ciar, it was just the shock and then the anger. And right now I don't even know that there's been acceptance. I was involved in the Survivor Summit over the weekend, and I was listening to somebody speak, and good gracious, it hit me that had my child not been murdered, I wouldn't be on this call. I wouldn't be in any of these conferences, Zoom calls, advocacy work. And some days, I think, golly, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to be in this position.
Yeah.
And then but I am. And I realized years ago that for whatever reason, thank you, God, I'm strong enough to do this, that I didn't quit, that I didn't give up, that that some people can do this and some can't. Some people just go on with their lives in however manner they do this and cannot be a voice. And I completely understand, because years ago, I never thought I would be, in this position. So I would say it's kind of been a blend and a mixture of these things.
Yeah.
And acceptance. I've accepted that James passed away Ciar. I'm 9 years later, I'm still working on that, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think in my mind, one of the roadblocks to acceptance is it just seems so unfinished. Yes, he was killed. Yes, there was a funeral. Yes, I saw my child. Yes, I buried my child. But who's responsible for this? With my husband, it was just final. It was his heart. It was final. That's that. With Ciar, well, sure, it's final, but what about the person that took his life? What about justice for him? What about, so to me, until that happens, it's kind of like I'm running from acceptance. Of course, I know he's not coming back. I've accepted that part, but the full acceptance, and just to be able to be a grieving mom rather than a mom that's still seeking justice and fighting, what I think is really bad police work in my son's case. I'm not quite there all the time on acceptance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfectly sense.
Okay.
Everything that you stated. And it's however you receive and feel,
Right.
Like they say, grief is nonlinear. You may go through this one, you may not go through that one. It's not
Right.
no chronological order. It's not meant that, you have to have some type of acceptance, but to your credit, you have accepted most of it. You have come to some point of acceptance of it. Like you stated,
Right.
You've come to that, and I'm sure that all is related to it being an unsolved case. So,
Right.
but
Right.
you are doing amazing as far
Thank
as sharing
you.
your story and making sure that Ciar's story get told, and someone is out there that knows this truth.
Exactly.
And we just pray that that comes forth for you and your family.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, explain some of the complexities of the grieving process that cause discomfort to your mental well being.
Admitting that I needed help. That was very, very difficult for me. Admitting that I needed help and that I couldn't do this. When James died, my thinking was I did the counseling for my children's sake. They needed it. They were too young, and I didn't know how to do this by myself. So that was just a given. After James died, so for 2.5 years before Ciar was killed, I was so independent. Everything, I was in charge of everything. So, and then the 2 years after Ciar was killed that it took me to get to counseling, I thought, I got this. And it wasn't right before counseling with Ciar, but one day my children left for school and they said, are you going to change clothes today? And I said, well, I change clothes every day, of course. And they said, you've been in that same outfit for 5 days. And I didn't even realize it. 5 days. They would leave for school. I would get in the bed and cry. They would come home from school. Here's dinner. Here's homework. I love you guys so much. Go to sleep. Wake up and repeat. I didn't even realize that. And that was, that changed me that day for sure. Mm-hmm. I took a shower and washed my hair and curled my hair and put on makeup and a nice outfit. And they came home from school and said, Mommy, you look so nice. And I thought, oh, these poor babies. I didn't even realize what I was doing to them. In Miami, if I can share, I had a dream. I had a dream shortly after that. And in the dream, it's still so vivid to this day. In the dream, we were in a really bad car wreck, Cameron and Lauren and I. And our car rolled and rolled and rolled and went down a ravine. And we were in the ditch. And I told the kids, stay here. Just don't come up. Stay in the ditch. We were out of the car, but stay in the ditch and it was on a highway. And I said, until I tell you. So I crawled up this ravine and I got to the highway and I looked to the left, looked to the right, looked to the left again. And there were no cars coming. And I said, the coast is clear. You guys can come up now. Well, that's a huge metaphor. I had to make sure the coast was clear to tell my kids, and the ravine was life. It's okay to come up. It's okay to participate again. It's okay to rejoin life. I've checked it out. The coast is clear. I'm going to protect you. And the car rolling and wrecking was, I couldn't protect Ciar. And my feeling that there's never enough that I can do to protect my other children. And that was the car wreck. I let it happen, but now the coast is clear. My word, that dream was such a pivotal thing for me. And it was life altering. Actually, it just made me move differently with my children. And I hated the dream. It was terrifying. I hated it, but gosh, I'm so thankful for it now. I'm so thankful because it absolutely changed how we responded and how I responded and proceeded with my children.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That dream. Now, you've talked a little bit about your advocacy work and how you've committed your life to it. Share that journey with us.
Sure. I first I heard about the Oklahoma Homicide Survivor Support Group right after Ciar was killed, and I called a phone number. No one ever called me back. A year later, I saw the same card. I called the phone number. No one called me back. This happened for a couple of years. And I thought, well, it wasn't meant to be. And somehow or another, several years after Ciar was killed, I saw information about a meeting, and I thought, let me see what they're about. And I went to the meeting, and they went around the circle, and everybody told why they were there, what happened in their lives, who they had lost to homicide. And I was so shaken by that. It was just traumatic. And the stories were just, devastating to hear. And I couldn't speak at that meeting. I was crying so badly, I could not speak. And I left the meeting and thought, there's no way in this world I'm ever going back. And I didn't for a year. And then I thought, well, let me try one more time. Second time I went, a year later, I went, and I still couldn't talk. I was crying, but I just, said, I'm Ciar's mom. That's about it. I waited a couple months, went back again, several months later, and went back again. And there was another mom there that was brand new to the homicide of her son, brand new to this journey. And she was inconsolable. She was who I was years past. She was absolutely inconsolable. And I thought during the meeting is not the time for me to try and console her. But I thought, I know what to say. I know what to say to her. So I waited till after the meeting and grabbed her in the hallway and, talked to her and said, I get it. I get it. I get it. You are mad at the world. You're mad at the person that took his life. You're mad at your son for being, he was going home from work. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but she's mad that he's gone. You're mad at the investigation. You're mad at the world, and nothing's going to fix it and make it better. I so get this. We exchanged information. I actually knew her from years ago. My stepdaughter went to school with her children. So I knew of her. We weren't friends or anything. And now, we text each other regularly. We're still in communication. Anything that has to do with a grief support event or something with remembrance, I'm letting her know here's an opportunity to show up. And I realized then I can do this. So I continued going to these monthly meetings. Several years ago, I was voted in as vice president of the group, and it has been a journey that, I've heard this said, and everyone can relate. No one wants to be in this group. No one wants to be in this fraternity, sorority, this group. But thank goodness there are people that understand our journey.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, May of 2019, I went to a community event about violence on the east side of Oklahoma County, which was where my son was killed. And I attended the event just thinking it was a community event. And there were all these people in red shirts that said Moms Demand Action, along with a bunch of community representatives. And after the meeting, Moms Demand Action people said, there's a group. Here's what we do. And I'd heard of them. I'd seen them in red shirts. I just thought, I'm busy enough, I don't have time. And right after that, it was Wear Orange Weekend in June. I spoke at Wear Orange Weekend. Next thing you know, I'm blinking and I'm at GSU, Gunson's University in Washington, D.C., August of 2019. And I have been with them ever since. I'm currently the survivor member lead in Oklahoma City. I'm also with Everytown Survivor Network as a 2020 fellow, rather. And then I'm involved with a leadership working group with Everytown and a leadership working group for cold case homicides with Everytown. So, one meeting turned into
several.
Yes, I'm an advocate. What is this? I'm happily accepting this, as part of my life.
You are so right. We don't want to be a part of this club, but we meet so many amazing people. Like,
oh gosh, yes.
I got an opportunity to meet you and so many others that really come and show up to do this work.
Absolutely.
It's very, very important to share your story and to learn more about, legislation and how we support and help each other. I know I have learned a lot, working with Moms Demand Action and also Everytown, even though I'm on a little hiatus break, but I needed that too. But it's I actually loved working in that whole atmosphere of just trying to, being a grief counselor, coach, and specialist. I saw the depth of the grief in that community. With my survivor sisters and brothers, and it's a lot of work that's there that needs to that we should, I think, not only do we come together to be there for each other, but there's a lot of uncovering work that needs to be supported with counselors and, that
absolutely
help support the community, because it's not only what I learned that we are dealing with the loss of our loved ones through this trauma, there is that untalked about trauma from past events or things that people don't share, just because we're here to talk about gun violence, but there's still so much other trauma that that we don't talk about, just because it's I guess it's not a platform to do that, but a lot of work.
Absolutely.
But it's a great opportunity for families that have lost their loved ones to please come for it. Do you have a call up action today for us for anyone that are experiencing the same life altering events?
Absolutely. It would be get involved. It would be whether you want to simply share your story to the community, to politicians, whether you want to be involved in the policy changes and legislation, or you want to just bring on other survivors and say, hey, there's a community for you. I would recommend to any and everybody to look up your local Moms Demand Action chapter and get involved. If there's not one in your city, there's one close to you. There are state chapters everywhere. I would definitely recommend that people reach out and see, attend a meeting, volunteer, see if there's something, there's so many different avenues that this can go down. Being a survivor member lead, I thought, okay, this is just what I'm going to do. And then, there's an opportunity to be in Survivor Connect. There's an opportunity for the fellowship program. I was amazed at how many different opportunities presented themselves to me. And that's great for somebody that wants a lot of opportunities. But other times, like I said, if you just want to sit with other people, that knowing that there are complete strangers that will advocate for me and my children and my son, and remembering and honoring Ciar is just really, I can't even tell you how heartwarming that is. I thought, these people so many haven't met me, and they're so responsive on Ciar's birthday and Ciar's anniversary of his homicide, and different times when I'm just missing my son. I have never been so surrounded by loving people, and they don't want anything from me. They don't want anything. It's not, I'll give you this.
Yeah.
I'll remember your son if you. No, it's just pure and genuine. So I would say, goodness gracious, contact, join or survive or at 64433. That number, texting it is just ingrained into me now. You can Google your mom's chapters. I would definitely say that. And wear a wonderful red shirt. We are really recognized. We are respected throughout this country. From the volunteers that we have and leaders that we have in Moms Demand Action.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing
Sure.
on your journey. What has been the most helpful to support your healing process?
Oh, acknowledging where I am every day and giving myself the permission that it does not have to be sunny and bright and rosy every day. That if it's a bad day, it is simply a bad day. And you wake up tomorrow and hope it's different. And if it's not, it's okay. But giving yourself permission to be okay where you're at. I think I shared this with you before, that I was at a ceremony, the Christmas that Ciar passed away, and the speaker said there's no clock or calendar on grief. There is no handbook or rule book. There are suggestions, but everybody's journey is so different. And knowing that and being okay with that, allowing yourself to be in a, not necessarily a dark spot, but just, some days I just miss Ciar, that every smell reminds me of him, every song, every commercial, I can hear my son or daughter say something and I'm like, gosh, that sounds just like Ciar. Ciar's daughter was born 4 months after he was killed. So she never got to meet him. She's heard stories, of course, about Ciar, but she'll say things sometimes that I think she sounds like him. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, so those days there, and it's really weird with my granddaughter. I'm thrilled that she sounds like him. I'm thrilled that she has some of the same expressions as Ciar has. And then I realized as soon as she goes home, how heartbreaking it is. So I love to see her and I love to spend time with her. And then there's that air out of the balloon whenever I take her home. And I think that the joy outweighs the sadness in this. I'm just heartbroken for her, of course, heartbroken for her. And knowing how many children are growing up without a parent or both parents because of gun violence, staggering. I never, Miami, I have to admit that prior to Ciar being killed, didn't hit my family, didn't think about it. Mm-hmm. And, while I would just ache hearing news of another homicide in my city and ache at the mass shootings that I'd hear about on the national news, and just think, gosh, I can't imagine ever being in this position, to now knowing I'm one of over 100 a day in this position that are affected by gun violence every single day in America. It's staggering. So, back to acknowledging when, some days are just melancholy and some days are fantastic. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to do this for Ciar. And other times I'm like, I'm not going to do it because of Ciar. Yeah. And just being okay with that. Mm-hmm. And self-care. I never knew about self-care, or I didn't have a name for it. And I am such a firm believer in that, whether it's, getting a pedicure, listening to music, leave me alone for 15 minutes. I need to smell this, wonderfully scented candle, just knowing that I can unplug from my family, society, my obligations, and just have me time. That's been huge as well. And that was really hard for me to get to. I felt guilty doing self-care. I thought, but I have blah, 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 blah to do. And so needs me. So-and-so needs me. Mm-mm. No. And, I shared with you also, my health just suffered tremendously after my husband passed away and Ciar passed away. The list of things going on in this body is staggering. And I firmly believe that it is grief related, it is trauma related. And, I had to figure it out. My kids cannot lose their mom because of health problems that are stress and grief related. So I know to unplug and that it's essential. I mean, it's literally essential for my health and my well-being to do that. And it also gives my children permission that they don't have to act a certain way and be okay every day, that they can just say, some days it sucks. This just sucks. Mm-hmm. And the passage of time doesn't help some days. It just doesn't help. It's still real and hurtful and traumatic and sad. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. Again, there are days that Miami, I wake up just to say, let me go to bed at 8 tonight, just so I can have a better day. Or it's only 2 p.m. Let me go to bed at 7 tonight and just hope, tomorrow's a better day. And it is, it always is. Mm-hmm. It's always, a restart. Every day is a restart on, this path that we have.
You spoke earlier about the holidays, and since we're coming mm-hmm. into the holidays, is there mm-hmm. anything that you can share with my Grief Nation listeners about how to process as we're going through the holidays? What was some examples, or can you give an example, or just kind of help us through that?
Mine has been well, I'll say this. Mine for the first several years was so different. I wanted no part of family. I did not want any part of being around family for the holidays. And the holidays were huge. Thanksgiving and Christmas were huge in my family. The food, my husband and my son, good Lord, they'd start talking about it in September. What? I can't wait to taste so-and-so's, grandma's dressing, and can't wait to whatever. They were the only two in my family that eat chitlins. Mm-hmm. The only two. So they would have this, common bond of hot sauce and mustard,
Right.
I mean, like, you're going to have to go elsewhere to eat them. So I'm not making them, nor will I eat them. But just the whole camaraderie of it. And, one thing that has been staggering is some days it catches me off guard how quiet our house is. There used to be 6 of us living here, and it was always boisterous. My husband was a huge, the funny man, the practical joker. He loved to laugh, and he made everyone else laugh. So just the quietness was really, really staggering. But I found myself not wanting to be around family, and I would actually have my kids go. Like, if you still want to go over to aunt and uncle's, grandma and grandpa's, go ahead. I promise you I'll be fine here. And I'm still kind of comfortable like that on Christmas. I'd rather be by myself than around family. However, since then, I really enjoy and respect the fellowship and, the coming together. I think for so many years, it was, to me, for sitting at a table there, I kept seeing 2 empty seats. They were full of other people, but to me, there are 2 empty seats at this table. And my mom started to practice years ago that I love. She would light 3 candles, one for my dad, one for James, and one for Ciar. She would light 3 candles, and they would stay lit the entire time that the family was together. Usually they'd be in the middle of the dinner table, and sometimes they would be placed on the buffet. But the candle stayed lit the entire time we were together. And the last person to leave my mother's house would blow out the candles. And she would say, Dad and James and Ciar aren't here, but they are. And we will remember them with these 3 candles. And, they would stay there. And that was huge. I went through a really hard time. And I said this one time, I think it was at Thanksgiving dinner a few years ago. I said, I can't stand that no one is talking about James and Ciar as if they didn't even exist. We're dancing around everything else. And hey, what's in the Black Friday sales? We're not even acknowledging these empty seats here that were so present. They both had such big personalities. And it was difficult to say, I said it because it was just so pressing on me and it was so real. And everyone said, we didn't want to upset you. We thought if we don't talk about it, this will trigger something to where, we don't want to make Sarah and the kids start crying. And I said, no, please talk about them. Please talk about them. That, for the kids, when they had limited time with both of them, it gives them memories to hear about. It gives them, bits and glimpses into their personalities that they might not have seen. Really? Did you and Dad did this, with Uncle so-and-so? So I think it was really healthy to give them permission too. Please talk about them. Mm-hmm. They're not physically here, but let's not forget that they existed. So those were some hard conversations, but very necessary conversations in our family to have. And now it's, I'm excited about Thanksgiving again. I embrace it. Can't wait to eat all the great food that everyone's bringing. Yeah. We're going to James's mother's house and my mother's house. We have to split our time and have, wonderful food at both places. And Christmas, we have a big Christmas Eve celebration at my mom's house, and Christmas Day it's just different. It's us and our family jammies, taking pictures and, really kind of relax, which I've come to adore. Yeah. But it was hard to get there. It was really hard to get there with the holidays.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That is a great way to open up for the conversations for others to have. Like you said, no one is having the conversations. And I know with what you just said, all that you stated, as far as your mother having these candles, creating a new ritual, or a different way to celebrate your loved ones during that time, because a lot of people, they don't know what to say. So they rather just not say nothing at all, but that's not good. We have to start having these conversations, and I'm so glad that you were able to share how your family has transitioned through that period and what you guys all came up with, to support each other during that time.
Exactly.
So let's talk about your, we had talked previously about spirituality and religion. And so how do you see the difference in that?
That's been a journey too for me. I was raised in the Presbyterian church. My dad's was a Presbyterian minister. So my Christianity has been so important to me. I'm a believer in everything my dad taught us, and how I was raised. I believe my dad and James and Ciar are all in heaven, and that I'll see them when I pass away. So I definitely, I consider myself a Christian and practicing Presbyterian. The spirituality part has been different for me. That's been, and I wouldn't say new, I've always felt, I don't know if you'd call it intuitive, but just, kind of a heightened awareness. I've always felt like that since I was a little girl, and I could just, sense things. And my mom would just say, pay attention to that, pay attention to that. And everyone else would say, well, that's not very Christian-like, so I didn't talk about that. I just wouldn't talk about that. And I thought, well, is it Christian or not? And I didn't even research anything. I didn't even read enough growing up to say, is this against Christianity? As I'm older, I think I have to be intuitive. I have to pay attention to whatever's guiding me to either agree or disagree, to walk this way or not this way, to say, whoa, 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 or welcome in. And I've never been wrong. I have to listen to that. And to me, that is complete spirituality. It's okay with myself. It's okay. It's giving me permission to be and see and do and feel, that I don't have to explain to anybody else. I believe that there's a power greater than us. And I'm very I need to be in alignment with that. I ran from that a long time, and I've realized, really in the last couple of years that I need to be in alignment and listen to that instead of diminishing it and saying, well, why would I think that or feel that? So, and I know you mean spirituality in a bigger sense than just being intuitive about something. But to me, since that hits home so directly, that's my, my response is knowing there's, it's operating away from the black and white sometimes. The what people would say, well, how do you explain this, or how do you explain that, or why is meditation important to you? Why is being still and present where you are, why is that important? Why don't you just say a prayer and get on with it? Well, prayer is part of that for me. But I think involves way more spirituality, and to me I equate that with self-awareness. Spirituality and self-awareness to me just go hand in hand, and being still and acknowledging that is the biggest part of getting there. And I'm welcoming it. The more I can learn, the more I accept it, I think the more well-rounded rather I am. And there's no, what could be wrong with that is bettering yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's so good for people to know, especially if you've experienced traumas like what you have gone through and what I've gone through, having that connection with your higher self and higher being, what you actually connect with in order for us to be in a better space to accept and to also realize that our loved ones are still here with us,
right,
in our heart, and having that connection as well. I feel
right.
For me, the spirituality is the consciousness and the awareness of that there is something higher than myself that I connect to. And
Absolutely.
I also can bring in that joy of my loved ones still existing. The
Absolutely.
the body is just the shell, but their spirit is to live forever. And that's what religion
Yeah.
teaches us as well. So
Yeah.
the spirituality is just, for me, it's just realizing that I am connected to a higher source, that divinity, and I am able to connect with that. And I can let all of my fears, my traumas, and all of that go to the wayside when I'm connected. That's what spirituality is.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I
Yes.
totally agree with what you were saying.
Yeah. You just have such an eloquent way of saying it. I'm kind of like, this is what you have a very
I
beautiful
think I
way of
just kind
saying
of
it.
tap into what I feel. And that's what you were doing. You were really just tapping into what is it for yourself. And I asked that question because I really want people to know that there's a difference. It's what you're taught and what biblically is there, but there's also outside of that there's this just sense of connection that's even greater than what we were taught. It's actually what we were born, our birthright,
yes,
we're born with. And that's what I want people to realize. If we had to rip away everything we were taught, what are we left with?
Exactly. And to me, it's kind of it's like, okay, you're taught this. Spirituality means take the deeper dive in it. You're taught that. Okay, then now how does that fit into your life? How do you respond and walk through something be in a more spiritual nature? And let me tell you, I say this often to my children, it's my struggle as a Christian. If I let a word out that I shouldn't have said, especially in front of my children, I'm like, it's my struggle as a Christian. It's just that growth. And to me, spirituality is taking that deeper dive. Okay, I might have read this passage in the Bible. Now what? Now what? What is it in the bigger steps, in the overall picture? Instead of I heard it and I read it, and next page, next chapter, verse. It's taking that dive. And like I said, I ran from that for a long time. I'm glad to be on the journey, though. It's ever evolving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for all of us. It's,
Hmm.
I'm still like, oh my gosh, there's still so much to know. Just when you think, okay, I finally, I don't feel I've ever arrived, but it's like there's still so much
Yeah. Yeah.
to learn out of every training or certification that I have. I still go back and I learn a little bit more
Hmm.
every year. I try to go back and even when it's time for me to recertify, just learning what's the new data that's coming available for us to know. So I'm always
Yeah.
open to learning.
Oh,
Sounds
oh,
like you
same
are
here.
too.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I heard a speaker and his name escapes me. I think his first name was Ian, but he was in the Survivor Summit that I was participating in this past weekend. And he said one of his practices for self-care, he calls it MEE, meditate, educate. So first, when he first wakes up, he meditates for 30 minutes. He reads, that's his education. He reads for an hour and then exercise, meditate, educate, exercise.
All right.
And I thought, well, that's simple.
Oh, very, very, very. Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah,
broke
yeah.
that down. And I thought, well, oh, what a wonderful practice. That's, and sometimes, okay, you do the meditation and the prayerful time and the quiet time. And then life happens and phones ring and oops, I'll
Mhm.
read tomorrow, or oops,
Yes.
the day, oh gosh, it's 11:30 at night and I didn't exercise. It was so simple to me.
Yeah.
Me every morning I start with myself, and
Yeah.
I would like to start incorporating that right after Thanksgiving.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I initially started writing my book, The Key Process, A Grief Guide to Mastering Spiritual Healing, that mastering the spiritual healing was developed out of these 7 keys. So I definitely can relate to the me, or the acronym that he used for his
Hmm.
daily practice, because it becomes a daily practice. You have to
Right.
make sure you stick with it. And for me, it was
Right.
meditation. That was my first key. And then it was plant-based dieting. Changing my diet really opened my awareness to like what I was putting in my body and how I was feeling, and taking away the sugars. Actually, my husband and I, we went on a 21-day Daniel fast, and we just never went back on the fast. I mean, we just never went back on eating meat after the
Mm-hmm.
fast. And so we did that for 2 years. And then I started
Wow.
studying mindfulness. And after studying mindfulness, then the exercising came in. So I started, for me, exercising looks different from than everybody else's exercising. Stretching was really huge for me because
Mm-hmm.
of chronic pain that I was having. And then I started learning about energy healing. So Reiki and energy healing came into my life. And then I started learning more about what ancestral healing mean. And all of those things
Mm-hmm.
kind of helped me define my purpose. And those were the 7 keys that came out for me. So once you have
Yeah.
this daily practice of something, everything starts coming to you
Yes.
like you said, the education and then the exercise, those things just start forming itself.
Right.
But you have to definitely make sure you make it a daily practice.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was amazing. So before I let you go, is there something that we didn't discuss or that you would like to see change or bring further awareness to?
Oh goodness. I would just, one of my personal preferences in this journey is, going back to the, if you see something, say something. We as a community, as a nation, cannot be like I was. It wasn't me, wasn't my neighborhood, wasn't my house. In that part of town, not my part of town. We are a community, and we have to, any sort of red flag that you think, doesn't sound right, why does somebody have 27 guns in their house? Why does somebody, ride with 13 guns in their car? That's not typical. It's not normal. It should not be accepted in the customary practice. It is getting involved, and getting involved safely, getting involved anonymously, however it's comfortable for you. I never want to be in the position in my life where I say, man, I should have said something. I should have said something. And clearly, since my son was killed, I will never be in that position. I won't allow myself. There's Crime Stoppers, there's tip lines for a reason. You can remain completely anonymous. the no snitch mentality it's just got to go. It has got to be banished. And we need to separate that from our distrust of law enforcement or our apprehension about law enforcement. We have to separate that and say there are families that are grieving and struggling because no one has come forward, and there were 200 witnesses, or there were 10 witnesses, or there is witness intimidation. We have to do better and be better about that. And that is not something that you can put into law. That is not something that you can legislate. That has to come from being a decent, compassionate, conscientious human being. And I really, really would like to see that changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for all of your insight and just sharing with us your day on talking about life altering changes. And
Yeah.
one more thing, I guess I would like to ask, what share two fond memories, one of your husband and one of Ciar, before you leave us.
Sure. Before my husband died, 6 weeks before he died, he was not healthy. He was disabled and had some problems. But again, we didn't expect him to pass away. But we were talking one day, pardon me, the kids were at school, and he said, "Hey, can you do me a favor? I want you to jot down a couple notes for me." I was being super goofy. I went and got a yellow legal pad and, go ahead. I was going to be his little scribe, just goofy. We were so goofy together. And I said, "Ready, go ahead." And he said, "At my funeral." And I threw the legal pad to him and I threw the pen at him. And I said, "I am not doing this. I'm not doing this." And he said, "I need you to pick these up and listen to me." And I started crying. I said, "Are you planning on ending your life?" He's like, "Absolutely not, but I'm tired. And, someday, whether it's in a year or 10 years from now, I want this process already done. And I'm doing this for you. So when the day comes, you won't say, 'I have no idea what he wants at his funeral. I don't know what to do.'" And I cried and I begged him, "Let's not do this. Please don't do this to me." And he said, "Please do it for me." Oh. And I did. And he said, "This is the funeral home I'd prefer to use. If there is a space at such and such a cemetery, this is where I'd like to be buried. These are the songs I want played. This is what I want you to tell our children. This is what I want you to tell my siblings and my parents." He listed everything. And I still have that piece of paper and there are tear stains on it. And I cried and wrote everything down. And he said, "Let me look it over." He's like, "You got everything perfectly." And he was to the very last detail. He had everything written down. And he said, "Go put it. We've got a file cabinet and we have a file for each of the kids that just says, James's important papers." And he said, "Go put it in the front of my file." And when he passed away, there it was. And that made it so much easier for me. The funny part about this, and that wasn't funny, it was very traumatic. And, but the funny part was, from that night until he passed away, we stayed up all night long talking. And we didn't know it at the time. It's looking back, the reflection that I think, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Looking back, we talked all night, every night, just remember this, remember that. And, we'd remember things together. We'd laugh, we'd quietly sing a song together. We just cracked up and we shared so much. And it's kind of like we were trying to cram as much as we could in this short period of time. Didn't know it then again. But one night we were just cracking up. Everything he said, and he was so humorous. I was cracking up and he'd start laughing. Yeah. And our daughter Lauren was 9. And one night it had to have been 2 or 3 in the morning. And she came out in her little gown with her hand on her hip. And she said, "Do you two mind? I have school in the morning." And she turned around and walked off, went back to bed. And we sat there and said, we were just chastised by our 9-year-old for laughing too loud. It was hilarious. Oh. And I will remember her look and her little hand on her hip like her mom. Uh-huh. And I thought, oh my gracious. And we laughed so hard, and we were both like, into a blanket, just doing it, we were out in the family room talking, and wow. It was hilarious. But just he was such a funny guy. I just, really appreciated his humor. And when we got married, he said, one of his vows was, I will make you laugh every day. And even the days I wanted to say, he would make me laugh. He'd say, I know you're mad, but, and he'd do something, ridiculous that I couldn't help but laughing. So I'm so thankful for all those years of laughter. And with Ciar, he was just goofy. I mean, he was such an intelligent young man, wonderful test scores and grades, and just goofy. And every single parent teacher conference from kindergarten till 12th grade, the teachers would say, he will not quit talking. He's the class clown. He would not. And I never saw him as a class clown. I just thought, oh, he's just being goofy and silly. Anything for a laugh, though, was his motto. And so he was just so goofy. He would just make up names, just non-existent names for each of us. We all had these nicknames, and he would make them up, and we're like, what? Why would you call us that? One of the things he called my daughter Toast, and I'm like, where did Toast come from? And he would, come and kiss her cheeks and pinch her cheeks and say, just call her Toast, not Lauren. She was Toast. Yeah. And I'm thinking, just goofy. And I miss that too. I just miss him being like, everyone would say, really? And then we'd just crack up. He would do impersonations all the time. Aww. He'd sound like somebody from work, or sound like, I bet this is what grandma's going to sound like. One really funny experience, Ciar was in high school, and no, I think he was out of high school, but he had some friends over in his room, and, kind of listening, and I couldn't understand anything they were saying. And I was like, don't talk slang, use proper English and proper diction. So I went to the door, and I knocked, and all of the guys had their pants were a little lower than I wanted them. I read something one day that said there's respectability at wearing pants at your waist. And so I said, okay, guys, clean up the language and everyone hike your pants up. Right. So the guys brought their pants up to about right here. They just pulled them all up here. They tightened their belts, cinched their belts. And Ciar said in a British accent, he's like, gentlemen, my mother's requested that we wear, our pants at a proper level and speak properly. So then they all started doing that, and, begged my forgiveness for not speaking. And they all had these British accents. It was hilarious. I'm like, oh, okay, smart Alex, thank you very much. Close the door. And they carried on. So as they were each leaving that day, or they, come out to the kitchen for something, their pants were still up to here. And, do you mind if I have just a skosh of tea? It was hilarious. And I thought, only Ciar would come up with something like, hey guys, let's all talk like this. Let's all wear our pants at a ridiculously high level to please my mom. And his friends to this day, one of his friends will come over and he'll say, hey, remember that one time we all pulled our pants up? It was, 12 or 13 years ago. It was hilarious though. Just goofy, unexpected. Yes. I've got wonderful, thankfully great memories with them.
Great. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And they all revolve around humor. I love that.
Yeah. And especially the story, first of all, going back to your daughter with her hands on the hip. And she's just as comical as the boys are. Oh, too. Yeah. Even at that young age. But her husband and Ciar just being, that joy and that light, and I could still see it in you, and you still, I can, oh my gosh, it's so touching. One thing that came up was these 2 P's about your husband. He was the preparer, preparing you for a time such that you had to go through, and he kept his promise to keep you always laughing and smiling. So I thought that was very interesting. He kept his promise, and he prepared you for a time.
Yeah, he did.
That, you didn't think that you were going to have to go through, but You did, but yet
Exactly.
you're here, you're doing
I
well, your
am.
children
Thank you.
are flourishing, and you
Thank
have
you.
still this joy in your heart and a smile on your face.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're
Absolutely.
doing good. You're doing good,
Thank you.
girl.
Thank
And you
you.
look beautiful.
Thank you so much. I will own the word resilience.
Yeah.
I need to get a t-shirt, sweatshirt made with that. Resilient.
Yes, yes, yes,
But
yes.
yeah,
Well, Sarah, thank you
thank
so
you.
much for being on the show and sharing your loved ones with us and helping
Yeah.
us to just realize, everybody's journey looks different, but it's so
Mhm.
good to hear how you have transformed and transitioned into this
Mm,
lovely woman, still,
thank
taking care of
you.
yourself and your children and making it looks great. Uh,
Thank you
uh,
so much. It
uh,
has been absolutely an honor to be on here, Miami. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Well, there you have it, Grief Nation listeners, and thank you for tuning in to another transformative segment on It's the Miami Night Show Grief Talk. Today, we give thanks filled with love and gratitude to our special guests for expressing your very unique grief journey and sharing ways of understanding the healing process. This is your girl, Miami Night, with much love and light until we connect again spiritually. Bye-bye.
Slow mo.
He's got me walking that grief walk.
Going slow mo.
He's got me talking that grief talk.
Going slow mo.
He's got me clocking the
It's the Miami Night Show.
hey, yeah.
Slow mo.
He's got me walking that grief walk.
Going slow mo.
He's got me talking that grief talk.
Going slow mo.
He's got me clocking the
What up, tribe? It's Miami Night Show, Master Grief Coach. Welcome to the Miami Night Show. You got me walking that grief walk. It's time for Grief Talk, y'all.
I talk about things you think about.
It's Miami Night Show.